Shem HaShem Na'aseh V'Natzliach, Shiur Torah, Bruchim Habayim. We're here in a special Shiur, Chanukah, Baruch HaShem. Shavua Tov, Chanukah Sameach to everybody. We're, B'ezrat HaShem, going to take a little bit of break from our series of the Jewish Hashkafa and try B'siyata Dishmaya to connect certain things that are happening during this great time of the year, during Hanukkah, to our day-to-day life. Of course, there's always Torah, there's always new insights. B'ezrat HaShem will bring them to light. Tonight's shiur will be for a refuah shlema for Rabbanit Levana bat Sarah, Rav Ephraim ben Shulamit, Rabbanit Sarah bat Anat, Avi Mori David ben Esriya, Doris bat Jora, Orit bat Ilana, and Sarah bat Sausan, and also for Atzlacha Rabba for Marsha bat Julie, Ayla bat Marsha, Samuel ben Marsha, Cephas ben Marsha, Alexander ben Marsha, Louis ben Marsha, Shaul ben Farzane, Yitro ben Avraham, David ben Esriya, Oshri ben Doris, Gary ben Doris, Elad ben Doris, and Amir ben Shaheen. And all of Am Yisrael, B'ezrat HaShem, will have a refuah shlema and atzlacha rabba, and of course all of the righteous Noahides that continue to support the Torah and do the will of Hashem. So with that being said, we have each year we get to this time, we light the menorah, we celebrate, get an extra few pounds added to our weight with the latkes and the sufganiyot and all the other oily, delicious food. But the question is really, do we know what we're celebrating? Do we know what we're celebrating? Now, of course, we've talked about this in the past in regards to celebrating Hanukkah. Quite frankly, the holiday itself is surely a cause to celebrate, just the fact that we're still here. And we've talked about the fact of how many of the the changes, the psychological changes that took place during that time a couple of thousand years ago are perhaps still affecting us today, and it's time for us to do tshuva. But tonight we're going to try to go a little bit deeper into what actually happened a little over 2,000 years ago. The whole miracle of Hanukkah is not something that is speculated among the Jewish people, but rather something that we have precise details of, as the Rambam in his Mishneh Torah in Ilchot Megillah v'Chanukah in chapter 3, he writes the following. Now, as a side note, Hanukkah took place in the year 3596 from creation, which is 2,186 years ago. But the Greek persecutions started several years beforehand, meaning that the whole story of Hanukkah is not something that happened over a week or even a couple of months, but it took a little while. So the Rambam discusses this in Ilchot Chanukah in chapter 3, and he says the following. In the era of the Second Temple, like I said, 2,100 years ago, the Greek kingdom issued decrees against the Jewish people, attempting to nullify their fate and refusing to allow them to observe the Torah and its commandments. They extended their hands against their property and their daughters and entered the sanctuary, wrought havoc within, and made the holy articles impure. The Jews suffered great difficulties from them, and they oppressed them greatly until the God of our ancestors had mercy upon them, delivered them from their hands, and saved them. The sons of the Hashmonaim, the high priests, overcame them, slew them, and saved the Jews from their hand. Here, if you notice, the language of the Rambam is very precise to first and foremost make sure to know that it is God that had mercy on us and delivered the victory. But in a physical sense, as far as how we relate to the world, what actually transpired is that the sons of the Hashmonaim, the Maccabees, were the ones that actually slew the Greeks and saved the Jews from their hand. They appointed a king from the priests, and sovereignty returned to Israel for more than 200 years until the destruction of the Second Temple. The second halacha continues as follows. When the Jews overcame their enemies and destroyed them, they entered the sanctuary. This was the 25th of Kislev. Some actually say that the Rabbeinu Nisim says that the victory took place actually on the 24th, and on the 25th is when they actually entered the sanctuary. So in essence, the 24th we ended the war. That's when we rested from the wars. That's why it's hinted in the name Chanukah. It's hinted Chanu, meaning rest. Ka, Chaf Hey, stands for 25. So they rested on the 25th. So the Rambam continues, and he says that they entered the sanctuary. That was the 25th of Kislev. They could not find any pure oil in the sanctuary, with the exception of a single cruse. It contained enough oil to burn for merely 1 day. They lit the arrangement of candles from it for 8 days, until they could crush olives and produce pure oil. According to the sages of that generation, they ordained that these 8 days, which begin with the 25th of Kislev, should be commemorated as days of happiness and praise of God. Candles should be lit in the evening at the entrance of the houses on each and every one of these nights to publicize and reveal the miracle. These days are called Chanukah. It's forbidden to eulogize and fast on them, as on the days of Purim. Lighting the candles on these days is a rabbinic mitzvah, like reading the Megillah in Purim. So here we see that the holiday itself is not something that we're not certain about. We have clarity, we have certainty. In fact, even the custom of eating sufganiyot is mentioned by Rabbeinu Maimon. Rabbeinu Maimon is the Rambam's father, who was one of the Gedolei Ado. He says, and this is 900 years ago, he writes that the custom of eating sufganiyot is an ancient custom, meaning that well even before than his day. We're talking about well over 1,000, 1,500 years ago. So Am Yisrael would already eat the sufganiyot that you eat today. So the whole Chag of Chanukah is a very, very important day for Am Yisrael, a very important week. But still, there's many questions. There are many questions that Chachamim toil for the last couple of thousand years and give, of course, different answers about why we do what we do. For example, one of the most famous questions is, why is it being celebrated for 8 days? Why not 7 days? Or perhaps 9 days? Why 8 days? Now, of course, some people will say, yeah, why not 15? Why not 17? Why not 32? No. When the Chachamim ask questions, they don't just throw numbers just because it's a different number, like some fools do, where they just want to be different. No. The reason why we're asking, why isn't it 7 days, and why is it 9 days, is because 7 days is technically how long the miracle was, if that's what the holiday's for. We had the candles lit for 8 days, but we already had oil for 1 day, which means that technically the miracle was 7 days. So shouldn't the holiday be 7 days? Or better yet, it should be for 9 days. Why 9 days? Because we know that it's already the sages enacted that in the exile, we keep the holidays for one extra day, just like we do with Pesach or Sukkot, and we do with other times during the year. When we're in the exile, we add an extra day because of the issues of time that we had back then. And even though we no longer have those issues of time, of knowing exactly when the holiday enters and when it ends, because we obviously have atomic clocks and things of that nature today, once something becomes a old custom among Am Yisrael, we do not change it. So the Yom Tov Sheni, the second Yom Tov, as the Gemara in Masechet Moed Katan discusses extensively, is there to stay. It's not going anywhere until Mashiach Tzidkenu comes. But nonetheless, the question would be, so if we have a second Yom Tov in the exile, we're here in America, there are people, obviously many Jews all over Europe, and all over Asia, all over the world, there's Australia, all over the world there are Jews. Why aren't they celebrating Chanukah for 9 days, adding 1 day to the 8 days that we have in Israel? So that's another question. Or if you're going to say, wait, but it's then it would be different than everybody else. Exactly, it will be different than everybody else because we have that extra day. So these are some of the questions the Chachamim ask. And there was actually a book that came out some years ago that had over 500 different answers to these questions from different Chachamim over the last 1,000+ years, discussing them extensively. Now, one of the things that you see when you learn Torah is that each time you read the words of the sages, you see that there's a little bit of another tidbit of information added that adds another piece to the puzzle. And that's why the Gemara in Yerushalmi, Masechet Pe'ah, says that the words of Torah are poor in one place and rich in another, meaning that you'll have certain things, certain statements of the Torah, certain subjects of the Torah, where in one place that subject is discussed with minimal fashion. There's, let's say, 1 or 2 sentences about it. But in another place in the Torah, that very same subject is discussed much more extensively, but not the same exact words, different words. And then the way you learn Torah, the way you learn what's called a sugya, is that you learn the all of the different statements that are said across the board, whether it's the Mishnah, the Gemara, the Poskim, the Midrashim, and so on and so forth. So we don't ever learn Torah just from a single place. We take all of the different aspects of the diamond and combine it into one, and that's how we learn a sugya. And this is why I always tell people that ask me the questions about what do I think about such and such rabbi that made a statement about a subject that was contrary to what I said. Generally speaking, usually you see the people that say other things where they said it in a passing fashion, meaning like they just said whatever statement they said in passing. It wasn't an extensive shiur, it wasn't an extensive discussion, it was just saying something in passing, showing that either they have not studied the subject, or they simply don't want to discuss it, especially the issue of Gehinom and punishment. It's a very uncomfortable issue for people to discuss for whatever reason. And usually when people talk about the topic, they minimize it. I personally recommend for people not to discuss it at all if they're not going to study the subject and say the truth. But nonetheless, anytime you hear somebody mentioning this particular topic, usually you see that it's very, very different than what you've heard in our shurim. And the reason why is because, like I said, either most people have simply not studied the subject extensively to know the details, or they simply don't want to study the issue or teach the issue. But generally speaking, if you read any sugya in the Torah, whether it's the issue about Gehinom, or issue about heaven, or issue about Shabbat, or Brit Milah, or anything else, you'll see that there are volumes and volumes and volumes of works written about these topics, and you could see it for yourself. But sometimes these particular topics are discussed in a smaller fashion, or quoted in smaller fashion in different places. And the way that a chacham actually gets to an actual conclusion in order to write that bigger book is by taking all of those little tidbits and combining them together into a complete idea. So with Chanukah, we see that all of the sages that discuss this particular topic of why the days are the days, why it's 8 days, not 7, not 9, not anything else, we see that each and every single one of them always adds a little bit more tidbits of information, another little bit of information. And one of the main things that I found fascinating is that the common knowledge that we have is that there were 3 decrees that the Greeks decreed on the Jewish people to torture us. Here we see that the Rambam is actually mentioning more than 3, but there are 3 famous decrees that the Greeks, led by Antiochus, Imach Shemo v'Zichro, where they wanted us to cancel Shabbat, no longer observing Shabbat, no longer observing Rosh Chodesh, and no longer doing a Brit Milah. That's one of the things that they, these are the 3 things that they wanted, which, by the way, reminds me, as a side note, Be'ezrat Hashem refuah shlema for Batya, Bat Sarah, and Tinok ben Batya. So now you have yourself a little bit of information, but then when you look at the Rambam, you see, wait a minute, hold on a second, there's a little bit more than just Brit Milah, a little bit more than just a Rosh Chodesh. We see there's more things. They extended their hands against their property, against their daughters. They went into the sanctuary. They caused havoc. You see, already there's a little bit more. There's a little bit more that is happening here. So we have to dig deeper. Now, when we dig deeper, we'll find actually that there were 22 decrees. 22 decrees, no less, passed by the evil Greeks on the Jewish people. And Rabbeinu Yitzchak Ratzvi, Shichyeh, he actually put the list together, which we'll go over. Now, it's very possible that this may require more than one shiur, but Baruch Hashem, Chanukah is 8 days. We have a few shiurim scheduled for this week, so we'll, Be'ezrat Hashem, try to cover all of them and try to see where we stand. Not necessarily just where we stand with knowledge about these decrees, but really where we stand in the world as a Jewish people, and has anything changed? Have these decrees been nullified as a result of the win by the Maccabees, by the Hashmonaim, by the Jewish people? Or are these decrees still valid? Quite frankly, another bigger question that Rav Ephraim asked in a shiur is, do we know why we're celebrating Chanukah? Because if we look at some of the decrees, we'll see that some of our brethren are actually actively, electively, and willingly practicing these decrees still to this day. Which means that if the Greeks, or the Mityavnim, which were the Jews that joined the Greeks, just like the Jews that joined the Nazis 70 plus years ago to kill their own brothers, to torture their own brothers, this was not a new thing. There were Mityavnim. There were Mityavnim in Nazi Germany. There were Mityavnim in Yevtsektia of the in Russia, going after the Torah world. There were Mityavnim in the Spanish Inquisition. There were Mityavnim, and of course, throughout all of history, including Egypt, and obviously, needless to say, in Greece. You had Mityavnim. What were these Mityavnim? Mityavnim were the Jewish people that chose to adopt the Greek laws, Greek lifestyle, not because somebody put a sword to their neck, but rather because they saw this as better. Just like the reformers did when they first started with a Mendelssohn, Shem Reshaim Yerkav, who was himself a Orthodox rabbi, who told people, be a Jew in your house and a secular person outside, a regular person outside. Unfortunately, just today I had a Orthodox Jew, a young man in his 20s, tell me that when he went to shul today and was discussing with somebody about how he's becoming more and more religious and he's trying to serve Hashem even better, one of the older Jews in the Kehillah told him, listen, you can be an Orthodox Jew in your house as much as you want, but outside, stay secular. This is no different than Mendelssohn from 200 years ago, inside a modern Orthodox shul. So you see that this mentality is not a new mentality and also not a forgotten mentality. It's still practiced today heavily in many communities. And not just the modern Orthodox community, you also have it in the Hasidic community, you have it in the Sephardi community, you have it everywhere. There's some type of Datan ve'Aviram or a Korach or even an Esav and an Amalek in every community, unfortunately. But it's for us, it's to identify who's Amalek and who's not. As the Yaakov cries to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Atzileni na miyad achi miyad Esav, save me from the hand of my brother, save me from Esav. Why save me from the hand of my brother, save me from Esav? Because when Esav looks like Esav and he's a Nazi, he's a Greek, he's a some type of enemy that's with a sword or a gun or some type of weapon in his hand, it's clear to me. But I'm not as worried about him as I am worried about Achi, when he looks like he's my brother. Save me from the one that looks like he's my brother. Why? Because the one that looks like he's my brother, sometimes he wears a kippah, sometimes he even has a beard, and sometimes he's even called rabbi. Therefore, he's much more dangerous than when Esav looks like Esav. And that's one of the biggest problems that we have in the world, not just today, but throughout all of history, where you have some of our brothers and sisters, unfortunately, join Esav, but continue to remain among us. No different than when the Christian missionaries who infiltrated the Jewish community and were exposed recently by B'naiinu organization and others, Yad L'Achim, also did. You see that these Christian missionaries were living as Orthodox Jews in Israel. The Sel Kohen Rasha, or the Rashaim in Arizona, the Dawsons who changed their name to Isaacsons. Of course, all of these people 100% Esav, but pretending to be Achi, pretending to be our brothers, pretending to be Jews. And of course, how did they enter? Because there was another one that was pretending for even longer that helped them. None of these people enter the Jewish communities by themselves. They all have a helping hand from somebody that actually is our brother, as far as actually a real Jew, but unfortunately still an Esav, still an Amalek, still a piece of garbage that is committing treason against his own people, like this Aminov character from Arizona, and I'm sure quite a few other characters that are helping others in Eretz Yisrael and other places. So you have all types of criminals, spiritual criminals, and even legal criminals, secular law criminals, that are walking amongst us, and some of them are rabbis, some of them are regular average Jews that have a beard and a hat. Some don't even have a beard and don't have a hat, but nonetheless, they're advocates for Esav much more than they're advocates for the Torah itself, for Yaakov. And it's very, very important for us to know that these things exist and stop living like the bird, the Bat Ya'ana, that sticks its head under the ground anytime it sees danger it doesn't want to deal with. We have to stop pretending like the world is full of roses and strawberries. Olam lo tutim. The world is not strawberries. The world is not an easy world to deal with, and people have to stop pretending like there isn't trouble ahead. But the key is to know that once we do know that there is trouble, we can prepare for it. And if we prepare for it, we can actually do well. Unfortunately, Rabotai Yikarim, for the last couple of thousand years, we've had mityavnim. We've had Jewish people that have become part of Amalek, part of Erev Rav, and still remain among us. And some have done it willingly, some have done it by ignorance alone. They simply don't know that there's something better available to them. And these 22 decrees were something that the Chachamim discussed in many Sfarim. I'll quote some of them, Be'ezrat Hashem, that really we have to identify, first and foremost, where we stand with these decrees today ourselves. And second of all, that if the Mityavnim came to our communities today, which one of our synagogues and political parties would they join? Would they join your shul because they see that your shul is more in line with their beliefs? Or would they join a different shul? If the Mityavnim are in line with the lefty liberal promotion of homosexuality, LGBT, and ABC, and EFG, and all types of filthy other things that they can create and try to use euphemisms to minimize them, if it's going to be one of these people that likes LGBT, likes the homosexuality, and he sees that your shul also likes homosexuality, has a rabbi that says that homosexuality, although it is a sin, it is not such a big deal, and we should not make it such a horrible thing. We could still accept them with open hearts and love and make it as if this is just one mitzvah that they're sinning, just like the rest of us are sinning with one mitzvah at least. If this Greek, this Mityaven, sees himself fit perfectly into your shul, the question that we have, the question that Rav Ephraim asked is, why are you celebrating Chanukah? Because really the whole celebration of Chanukah, at least until now we thought, was that we were celebrating that we won the war. We won the war and we had a miracle. But after we complete the review of these decrees, I think we'll come up with a different reason of why we celebrate Chanukah. We still have very much a reason to celebrate Chanukah, but I don't think it's because we won the war. And you judge for yourself and see if you agree or you have a different opinion. Either way, Be'ezrat Hashem, na'aseh v'natzliach. So, the Chachamim talk about how there were decrees by the Greeks, who were people that believed in many gods and simply could not coexist with a nation that believed in a single God. Their gods needed them. Our God doesn't need us. Their gods could do individual jobs, and that's it. Our God does everything and doesn't sleep, doesn't rest. Their God are elective, where you can believe in them and you'll get, according to them, rewarded, or not believe in them and nothing would happen. Perhaps you'll have a stronger God instead. Our God, whether you believe in him or you don't believe in him, doesn't change his viability, his reality, his significance, but nonetheless it does change yours. Because if you believe in him and you follow him, you'll get rewarded for it eternally. And if you don't, you'll get punished eternally. And yes, Judaism not only believes in eternal punishment, we are the source of the teachings of eternal punishment, as it's mentioned in both the written and the oral Torah. Now, the Greeks could not coexist with such a people. They simply hated the fact that the Jewish people tried to be holy. They hated the fact that while the Greeks felt that you needed to live in this world and this world alone. You had to benefit out of this world physically in every way that you possibly can. Fulfill every desire that you have, even if your desire is against human nature. And they pushed this on the Jewish people more than they did any other people. Number one, because other people didn't necessarily reject it as much as the Jews, because they didn't have necessarily much to fight for. But secondly, because the Jews reminded the Greeks, as they do all of the heretics, that they're wrong. And so long as there's a Jew in the world, there has to be an Esav that hates him. Now, there is a Megillah that is called Megillat Bnei Chashmonai, the Megillah of the sons of the Chashmonai. It's also known as Megillat Antiochus. And there you'll see the story of what happened with the Jewish people, the decrees, the Maccabees. And in Megillat Bnei Chashmonai, it mentions that there were 3 major decrees 4 times. 4 times it's mentioned these 3 evil decrees that were passed on the Jewish people. The cancellation of Shabbat, cancellation of Rosh Chodesh, and the prohibition of the Brit Milah. Now, we ask ourselves, why did they pick those mitzvot? Why Shabbat and not Tefillin? Why Rosh Chodesh and not Yom Kippur? Why Brit Milah and not Kashrut? And only after you review the details of each and every single one of those decrees will you understand why this and not others. And quite frankly, understand that it's not that they just pick those, it's that we pick those. We, as the Jewish sages, our forefathers, pick those 3 as the main 3 to highlight, even though there were 19 other ones, because these were the 3 major ones that, in essence, whoever fell for those 3 typically fell for the rest of the 22. Whoever held up and withstood the test and did not start violating Shabbat, did not start driving on Shabbat, did not start skipping the Brit Milah for their kid out of because they were scared of the Greeks, and did not honor the decree of not calculating the Rosh Chodesh, if you were able to withstand the test, typically you were one of the Maccabees. But if you didn't, typically the person became one of the Mityavnim and adopted the rest of the laws. Now, the mentality of the Greeks was not a new mentality. In fact, the mentality of the Greeks began with Esav himself, Esav Edom. The Torah says that Esav, he is Edom. And Edom is one of the way it represented itself in the world was the Greek Empire. It was also the Roman Empire, and it's of course the Nazis as well, and others. But nonetheless, Esav, on the day that he sold his firstborn rights to Yaakov, the Torah says that the sages say in the Midrash that 5 sins he made that day. 5 sins, meaning that one was desecrating the firstborn right. He also had a Gilui Arayot, immorality, heresy against the resurrection of the dead and the Olam Haba, and also committed murder. So we see that the Esav made these 5 sins, and his descendants built off of that, where their decrees, as we'll see today, all have a connection to those 5 sins. The mentality of Esav was based on the verse of in Isaiah chapter 2 verse 23, Echol v'shatoki machal namut, eat and drink because tomorrow we will die, meaning live for today. The you only live once mentality that you have in the world, unfortunately today, that people just do whatever they want because they believe you only live once. This type of belief is heretical. It's antithetical to the Torah because we not only believe in a resurrection of the dead, of the righteous dead, but also we believe in an eternal world, in a world that life begins after this life. What kind of life a person's going to have after this life obviously is determined based on their actions in this life, where Adam la'amal yulad, a person came to this world to toil, and toiling meaning not work on Wall Street or for the sanitation department or collecting bitcoins, but rather a person came to this world to collect mitzvot. A person came to this world in order to serve HaShem through the natural world. So yes, he has to work, she has to work, everybody has to get educated, everybody has to find ways to make a living in an honest way, but through that life, they also have to make sure that God is a priority in their life, and not just the theory of God, but rather the belief system, the religion that HaKadosh Baruch Hu put into this world called Judaism. When the Torah was given to us at Mount Sinai, it wasn't just given to the Jewish people at Mount Sinai, but rather was given to the entire world, and the entire world has to comply, both Jews and Gentiles in different aspects. The Jews have to fulfill the entire Torah and all of its commandments that apply to the Jews, and the Gentiles have to fulfill the Torah by complying with the commandments that apply to the Gentiles, mainly the 7 Noahide laws and everything that's common sense. Now, the mentality of a Jew needs to be, or anybody really needs to be, where I'm here to serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu while I work, while I get married, while I have kids, while I give chinuch, education and rearing to my children, while I do everything that I do, I have to have God in mind. And the mentality of Esav was, you only live once, go and just enjoy yourself. Whatever physical pleasure you can get it. Whatever mental stimulation you can get it. Whatever monetary benefit you can get it. Meaning, live as if there are no consequences because you only live once. And these are the types of people that HaKadosh Baruch Hu hates, as the prophet says in Isaiah. Now, the Greeks tried to implement this type of belief of you only live once into the Jewish world, because so long as the Jews existed, they reminded the world that there is an eternal life. There is one God, and there is a consequence for every single action that you do. And therefore, more than any other nation, more than any other people, the Greeks focused all of their resources to try to destroy the Jewish people, meaning the greatest civilization in size and war power in the world went against one of the smallest. And this is not the first or the last time this happened. That in itself shows that the Jewish people are the chosen people, because no other people have had the greatest civilizations target them, lose the battle, cease to exist, and they live to tell the story. Not once, or the countless times that the Jewish people have had. But you see that the Assyrians, the Babylonians, the Romans, the Greeks, the Nazis, the Spaniards, the Turks, all of these different civilizations were at their time the strongest in war power, the strongest in control, the strongest in wealth, strongest in every aspect. But instead of just continuing to live their lives and continue conquering the rest of the world, They focused on a small people located on a small piece of land, smaller than the state of New York, and take all of their war power, all of their weapons, all of their money, all of their resources just to destroy these people. And of course, HaKadosh Baruch Hu destroyed that great civilization, made them into a distant memory in the history books, and the small people that suffered dearly lived to tell the story until today. This is really the story of Am Yisrael. This in itself proves that Am Yisrael is the chosen people and the world was created for them. But of course, you'll still have anti-Semitics and people that are delusional, that are sometimes self-hating Jews, that don't think that the Jewish people are unique, and quite frankly, don't even want to believe that the Jewish people are unique or that they're different than everybody else. Why? Because if they are unique, that means there has to be a reason. And the only reason you can find is the Torah. And if the Torah is the reason, then you have to ask yourself, why is the Torah a book? A book that was written 3,300 years ago, why is that strong enough to make a people so everlasting? Obviously, this book is of divine nature. And if the book is of divine nature, obviously I have to read what it says and follow what it says. And if I have to follow what it says, and what it says is contrary to my lifestyle, where that book says that homosexuality is forbidden, that book says that immorality in general is forbidden, that book says that eating non-kosher food is forbidden, desecrating Shabbat is a sin that will cut me off from an eternity of good and replace it with an eternity of bad. That book says a lot of things that are contrary to my pleasant-seeking life. Then, of course, unless a person is ready to change, he's not going to be willing to do it. So you see, it's that when you believe that the Jewish people are chosen, you can't just leave it at that. You have to ask yourself why. The Greeks asked themselves, why are the Jewish people chosen? They found out it's because of the Torah. So rather than change their lives, rather than change their mentalities, they simply decided to eliminate the people of the book. This, unfortunately, is not the first or the last time, and there are even people today that try to do it. All types of heretics try to do it. There's even a guy that came to a lecture by one of the Kiruv rabbis in Eretz Yisrael, who told a story directly to Rav Ephraim. And he said that after the lecture, both the husband and the wife came up to the rabbi who had a lecture that was discussing different proofs, different scientific proofs, different biblical proofs that the Torah is of divine nature and that it had to be given by the hand of God. It's not something that some person wrote, both the written Torah and the oral Torah, and there are countless proofs that show it. After this lecture took place, the woman said to the rabbi, "Rabbi, I'm honestly amazed. This lecture changed my life, and especially the part where you talked about how the Western Wall was promised by HaKadosh Baruch Hu to never fall. That, I did the calculation in my head, was so shocking to me that from now on, I'm going to start observing Shabbat and continue to learn and build from there." And the rabbi asked the woman, "What about your husband? Did he get the same impact?" And the woman looks down in embarrassment. And the rabbi says, "What's wrong? He didn't like it?" She says, "No, he also got shocked by the same exact proof. Only he, instead of taking on the mitzvah of Shabbat, he says he's going to try to blow up the Western Wall and prove the Torah wrong." Now, of course, some of us are laughing inside and some of us are crying. But the reality is, Rabotai, is that some people would rather blow up the Western Wall than observe one single Shabbat. Some people would rather do all types of vile things than observe the Torah, giving themselves all the excuses in the world of why they can't, and why it's not this, and why it's not that. And it's such people that you feel bad. You feel bad for such people. Why? Because they don't even realize how thick the klipa is on them. How difficult it's going to be for them to do tshuva, even if they wanted to do tshuva. Now, the Greeks tried to eliminate the whole notion of an eternity from the thought process of the Jewish people, because they knew that if they hurt the Jewish people, they'll conquer the entire world, not just physically, but also spiritually. So the first decree that they passed was the prohibition of observing Shabbat. The reason why, Rabotai, is because Shabbat is a holy day. All civilizations since the beginning of time had a 7-day week with 24 hours. There's no civilization that you can speak of that had 8 days or 9 days or 3 days. Everybody had virtually the same 7-day week, which in itself is a proof that the Torah is of divine nature, because there really isn't a reason. There really isn't a reason for the week to have 7 days if not for the Torah. And you can say, yes, but the world rotates in a certain fashion and you can calculate it's 24 hours. Yes, but who said that the 24 hours needs to be 24 hours? Somebody could have simply calculated it for me to be 12 hours or 3 hours or 3,000 Milichus or Pikachus or Tatachus. Why choose 24 hours? Needless to say, even if you all arrive at the same conclusion that there is 24 hours, why end it with 7 days? Why not just have simply a eternal clock, a clock that doesn't end? First day, second day, 8th day, 9th day, 15th day, 150th day, 190th day, 190,566th day, and on. And why not just continuously count from the beginning till forever? Or better yet, just say 1 day. Every week is 1 day, and just simply no separation whatsoever. The only reason is the Torah. That's the only reason why there's 7 days a week. But the reason why the Jewish people keep the Shabbat is not just because there's 7 days a week, because that technically is observed by all civilizations and all people. The reason why we observe the Shabbat is because HaKadosh Baruch Hu made the Shabbat for us. As the Gemara in Masechet Shabbat says, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu, before we got to Mount Sinai, HaKadosh Baruch Hu told Moshe Rabbeinu, go and tell Am Yisrael that I have a matana gdola bebet knazai, v'shabbat shma. I have a very big gift in my treasure chest, and the name of it is Shabbat, and I'm going to give it to you. Even before the Torah was given to Am Yisrael, we received the Shabbat. And this gift of the Shabbat is the gift that HaKadosh Baruch Hu already thought of in creation that He's going to give to us. So much so, that the Gemara says that each day in Parashat Bereshit, when HaKadosh Baruch Hu completed the creation after each day, where Chachamim say, in essence, the creation of everything took an instant. Bereshit bara Elokim et hashamayim v'et haaretz, that the HaKadosh Baruch Hu created out of nothing everything, but then everything else after that was a yetzirah, where He innovated the creation that He already created initially. So you see that the words that are being used after the initial creation, that everything came from nothing, is one word, and there's a different word used for the rest of the creation taking place during those 6 days. The reason why is because HaKadosh Baruch Hu took the creation that He already created in an instant, put it, let's say, for argument's sake, in outer space, and then put it in the right place at the right time during those respective days. Now, all of those things, whether it's the heaven and the earth and the land and the water and the fish and the animals and the taninim agdolim, the huge reptiles, or the animals and the kosher animals, non-kosher animals, the flowers, the trees, the moon, the sun, the stars, all of these great things were put in place on those respective days. But we see that at the end of each day, when he completed that day's placement of those items, we see that it says, V'erev v'boker yom rishon, v'erev v'boker yom sheni, v'erev v'boker yom shlishi, v'erev v'boker yom revi'i, v'erev v'boker yom chamishi, v'erev v'boker yom hashishi. So we see there's something different. It says there was evening, there was morning, there was night, there was morning, there was night, there was day, first day. There was night, there was day, second day, third day, fourth day, fifth day, sixth day, the sixth day. We see that there is hashishi. There's an extra letter before the word shishi, sixth. Why do we have this extra letter preceding the word? It's a superfluous letter, meaning it's not necessary. If you suffice to say Rishon, meaning first day, which is in English called Sunday, and second day called Monday, and third day called Tuesday, and so on and so forth, if you suffice to just call it first day, second day, third day, fourth day, why is the sixth day called the sixth day? Says the Gemara in Masechet Shabbat, HaKadosh Baruch Hu wanted us to know this day is different. Because this is the day that HaKadosh Baruch Hu made a covenant. Made a covenant with two witnesses, the heaven and the earth. And that covenant was that one day I will give Shabbat to Am Yisrael. If they accept it, if I'm going to give the Torah to Am Yisrael, if they accept the Torah, which means they'll accept Shabbat and the rest of the mitzvot, we will see Shabbat. We will all benefit in eternity of good, just like the heaven, the Olam Haba that you feel in Shabbat. But if they reject the Torah, we won't even live to see. The world will not exist to see Shabbat. So now we see that this Shabbat is a testimony not only of HaKadosh Baruch Hu's original deal, but of our acceptance of the Torah, which by default means our acceptance that HaKadosh Baruch Hu himself created the world in 6 days and ceased creating on the seventh day. So when a Jewish person keeps Shabbat, observes Shabbat just like the halachot say, they don't drive on Shabbat, they don't use their phone on Shabbat, they don't cook on Shabbat, they're not working or even discussing work on Shabbat. They're observing Shabbat by having a kiddush, spending some time learning Torah, spending some time sharing Torah with their family, resting a little bit, praying to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and simply enjoying the day in a kosher fashion. They're, in essence, screaming to the heavens, yes, I admit, accept, and love the fact that HaKadosh Baruch Hu created the Shabbat. And he created the Shabbat after he created this entire world. And if it wasn't for me to accept this Torah, I would have never seen Shabbat. I would have never simply existed altogether. Because HaKadosh Baruch Hu created this whole thing for me. And the Shabbat is one of the gifts that HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave us because we are the Jewish people that he created all of this for and are in essence giving us a gift before we accept the Torah. Telling us that's what is on the line. This Shabbat that he gave to Am Yisrael before Mount Sinai is in essence announcing the deal to them that existed already at the time of the creation. So when a person observes Shabbat, she's in essence saying, I accept HaKadosh Baruch Hu is Torah and everything. On the other hand, when a person does not observe Shabbat, The Gemara in Masechet Shabbat says that person might as well be one that's running in the middle of the street telling the whole world that he doesn't even believe in God. He doesn't believe in God, and he doesn't believe that God created the world in 6 days. Which are two different beliefs, but nonetheless, same conclusion. A person can say they believe in God, but they don't believe that God gave us the Torah. Or they believe in God, but he doesn't believe that God cares if we observe Shabbat or we don't. This was in essence more in line with the Greek theology. The Greeks believed in a God. They actually believed in many gods, but they simply did not believe that those gods cared about your behavior to such an extent where they would reward or punish you based on your sexual preference or behaviors or the way you conduct yourself in business and otherwise. So the first thing that they wanted to forsake and prohibit the Jewish people from doing was observing Shabbat, because that is a constant reminder to a Jewish person and his family that it is God and God only that created the world. So this, so long that the Jewish person believed in this God being the ultimate God, being the only God, this conflicted and was in essence antithetical to the Greek belief. The second thing is that they forbid the Jewish people from observing Rosh Chodesh. Why do they care about Rosh Chodesh? Rav Ratzbi writes that in those days, they had the custom, which, B'ezrat Hashem, we can implement in our days. They had a custom that Jews from around the world would get together every Rosh Chodesh and would learn Torah together. The best speakers, the best lecturers, the best material, people would leave for Rosh Chodesh. That was a time that they would learn Torah instead of waiting for Tisha B'Av to have a all-day event where people are one lecture after another giving shurim, instead of waiting for Yom HaAtzmaut, Le'avdil, to give shurim all day, a day full of Torah. Every Rosh Chodesh they had a day full of Torah around the world. It's needless to say, especially in Israel. And the synagogues would be packed, the Batei Midrashot would be packed just for the sake of learning Torah. And these Greeks decreed to cancel this day. Why? So long as the Jewish people learn Torah, and needless to say, they learn Torah united, there's no way we're going to defeat them. Now, of course, this was not it. They also put a decree that no more Brit Milah. No more Brit Milah, as Brit Milah is what takes a Jew to the supernatural. There is no physical benefit that was known to man at the time and only known to some people today about having a Brit Milah. Now, although more than 30% of society today in America, especially, still circumcises their children, many people do it because of customs. Of course, the Jewish people do it because of our religion. Even if a Jew is not religious, most of the time, they still circumcise their children. But there are many goyim, many people, and including Jews, that actually frown upon the whole circumcision, Brit Milah, especially the ones that are anti-Torah, where they hate the Brit Milah, so much so that they create all type of perverted material that they try to pass on to people and show them how this whole Brit Milah is wicked, it's pedophilia, because the rabbi puts does metzitza b'peh, who takes the blood out from the Brit Milah with his mouth, and they have all of these dirty thoughts that these tzaddikim that are doing Brit Milah for free are pedophiles with babies. I mean, this really the filth and the sickness in society today is one of those things where it never ceases to amaze me how filthy and disgusting people are to think such things. But nonetheless, it's because they have so much filth and garbage in their mind that they're blaming other people of doing it. The liar is the one that suspects everybody else of lying. The thief is the one that's constantly worried that people are stealing. So because they have filth in their minds, they in essence say that the tzaddikim have it in their mind as well. But nonetheless, there are many people that will look at a Brit Milah and say, this is harmful. What are you doing? Why are you cutting a piece of the male member of a child? I mean, it doesn't make any sense. But of course, if you look at history, this is something that has been practiced for well over 4,000 years by the Jewish people, something that has been practiced by the non-Jews for just as many years as Avraham gave a Brit Milah to Ishmael, his son. So of course the Ishmaelim, the Arabs, still have circumcision to this day, and quite frankly, a good part of the world, I would say at least 40% of the world, if not more, of the entire planet have a circumcised male member. This is not a newfound idea. It's not an innovation of today. But still, you'll see the people that are uncircumcised, both in their male member and in their hearts, frown upon it in such a way where they'll start accusing you of all types of crimes against human nature. Why? Because they don't know of anything that's beyond their little mouse brain. They don't know anything. They don't know about the customs. They don't know about religions. They don't know about anything beyond just what they see. The little burger that they see and eat, the physical needs that they have, that's how far they see. Of course, the Jewish people, we connect everything to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And we don't walk right or left without HaKadosh Baruch Hu letting us know which way to walk. And the Jewish people have this commandment of having circumcision since the beginning, where Avraham Avinu, hundreds of years before we received the Torah, was commanded by HaKadosh Baruch Hu to circumcise himself and all of the people of his house. At the age of 100 years old. Now, the Greeks could not live with this. Why? Because this Brit Milah did not just end at the time it took place, but rather it was a life choice. A Brit Milah is not necessarily something that you do on the 8th day, or if the baby is weak or ill, you have to delay the Brit Milah and take it and do it at a different time. If the baby has jaundice, which is common, if he has jaundice at above a level of 13.5 or 13.5 and above, you don't do the Brit Milah. As a matter of fact, the Rav Tzion Abba Shaul says that anybody that does a Brit Milah when the baby's jaundice level is above 13.5 is really putting the baby's life at risk, and it's safek, it's doubtful if that Brit Milah is even valid as a Brit Milah, or if the child really has to do atafat adam anyway, because you really did sin in that circumcision. So sometimes the doctors are much more lenient than the rabbis, and they just say, no, I want to do Brit Milah. You can do Brit Milah on the second of the baby is born, or you can do it a few days later, or you could do it there. And sometimes the doctors don't really care, and sometimes they care too much. So that's why we have our traditions, we have our knowledge, our sages know exactly what and who and when, and including medical knowledge. And if the baby has a jaundice level that's high, you don't do the Brit Milah. If the baby is weak, you don't do the Brit Milah. Typically, if a baby is born early, it's typical that the baby is weak. And therefore, you don't do the Brit Milah on the 8th day, and you wait until the baby is stronger. And that's something that has to be verified and approved both by the doctor as well as the rabbi. Not one or the other. Both have to confirm that this baby is strong enough to have a Brit Milah, because you don't want to put any child's life at risk. And what about the whole issue of doing on the 8th day? The 8th day is for healthy kids. If the kid is not healthy yet, you don't put the kid's life at risk for the sake of a mitzvah. You don't put the life at risk. Now, when it comes to the Brit Milah, this Brit Milah is not just a single act, but rather a life choice. A life choice to make this body, this entire body, this schnitzel that you have, this burger that you call a body, take this body and make it holy. No less than a Sefer Torah. Or make it more worthless than a burger that sat outside of the fridge for 3 or 4 days. That's what the Brit Milah is going to decide. If you take that Brit Milah that you got, either at the 8-day-old or later, you take that Brit Milah and you keep that holiness throughout your life, that means that your entire body is no less holy than a Sefer Torah. On the other hand, if you're not observing your Brit, and you're constantly desecrating your Brit, wasting seed, promiscuity, homosexuality, and all types of immoral crimes, that means that that body is worth less than a hamburger. And you need to do tshuva. You don't need to destroy the body any further. You don't need to kill it, chas v'shalom. But nonetheless, you need to fix it. You need to do a tikkun brit. You need to fix what you have desecrated. Now, the Greeks would have none of this. Why? They lived a life of immorality. In fact, the immorality that went from Sodom and Gomorrah, traveled to Greece, and spread to the whole world of today. Where when they had their gladiators, their muscular warriors, tried to make a statement, they would put them in a coliseum and take some poor Jewish people and make them fight. But to make sure that everybody enjoys the fight, because perhaps some people don't necessarily just want to see blood, they made sure that the fight was being done naked. That's how sick these sick people were. The homosexuality, the promiscuity, the constant vile nature that they called life, to us, Jewish people, is death. It's worse than death. So for us to sanctify our body, as the Torah says in Parashat Kedoshim, Kedoshim tiyu ki kadosh ani, you be holy because I am holy. HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, one of the ultimate ways for a Jew to make themselves holy, and quite frankly, without it, there is no holiness, is the holiness of the Brit, the holiness of the way a person is with their treating their own body. If a person treats their body like it's public property, there is not an ounce of holiness in that person, whether it's male or female. If she is walking around and makes sure that her body is like public property, like it's a garbage pail that everybody can see. Everybody can see every crevice, everybody can see every layer, everything. That woman has literally zero holiness in her. She has a holiness of a neshama, but that is hidden by the klipa that she is continuing to build upon, walking around immodestly. No, but she does afrashat chala and give tzedakah. Okay, in Gehinom, they're also going to give that tzedakah to certain people and do afrashat chala over there. When you walk around immodestly, you are showing that you simply do not care about Torah of HaShem. You don't care about HaShem, you don't care about His Torah. Why? Because the holiness of a person begins with how they treat their body and making sure that they are not public property. Same thing with a guy. Guy that walks around with immodest clothes, which unfortunately has become very common today. All these guys that call themselves religious, walking around with tight pants or half naked or naked or whatever they're walking around with. Or needless to say, guys that are constantly going to all of these nightclubs and bars and doing Hashem Elachem, how many sins over there with different people every day, or with themselves. All of these different things desecrate the holiness of the body. A person like that cannot retain any holiness whatsoever until they start doing tshuva. This is why you will sometimes see people start taking on mitzvot. He started keeping Shabbat. He started keeping kosher. But his head is still dafuk. He still can't learn Torah like a normal person. He still can't grow in Torah. He still curses like a truck driver. He still acts like as if, every day he could be giving up the entire Torah. Why? Because doing some mitzvot is good, but unless you have sanctified yourself by having a Brit Kodesh, you haven't started doing tshuva. You haven't started doing tshuva. When a person sanctifies themselves, sanctifies their body, not just by doing mitzvot, by actually sanctifying the body, by keeping themselves moral and protecting their Brit, that person can do anything. They can learn Torah at the highest level, just give them time. They can observe all of the mitzvot, just give them time to get there. They'll get to everything. But if they don't protect their Brit, you'll see that wherever they are, at some point they hit a plateau and they can't grow further. They can't grow further. So this covenant that we got at the time of Avraham Avinu, that we have to implement in every Jewish baby, is one of the main things that makes the Jewish people not only different, but makes the Jewish people holy. And when a Greek saw that every time he saw one of his gladiators fighting one of the poor Jewish people, and he sees the Jewish people naked and he sees that they're different, this would drive them insane. Would simply drive them insane that this still existed, and therefore they said that this is not something that can continue. Now, Rav Yagen, alav shalom, writes in his sefer, in the ones that I've mentioned to you guys before, about that we have about each part of the Torah. Rabbi Yagen spoke about through his many years of doing kiruv and giving lectures, and one of the books that they put together is the Chanukah and Purim, all types of lectures that Rabbi Yagen spoke about Chanukah and also Purim. And here on in chapter 6, page 37 in the English version, he brings the Radak. And the Radak says that God will release us from the pit of exile by the merit of the covenant. Meaning that the Mashiach is going to come when Am Yisrael protects their Brit. Now, of course, everyone will say, wait, it's never going to be that every Jew keeps their Brit. There's always going to be somebody that's still a Bilam. Certainly. But when enough Jews protect their Brit, enough Jews do tshuva, enough Jews care about their other fellow Jews and society at large to do tshuva for the issues of immorality, then you will see the domino effect of Kedusha stem into the world enough to make a Kadosh Baruch Hu bring the Mashiach. Meaning you don't have to wait for the whole world or the whole Jewish people to protect their covenant, but rather there already being enough people doing it and enough people caring about it. Now, Rav Yagen also says, why the Brit Milah? Why is it done on the 8th day? He brings the Maharal. The Maharal says because 8 is a number that represents the supernatural, something that's above nature. And the Brit Milah elevates a Jew above nature and gives him a share in eternity, in life after death, and the resurrection of the dead and the world to come. And therefore it was no wonder why at a Brit Milah we recite the verse in Ezekiel chapter 16 verse 6, where it says, I passed over you and I saw you wallowing in your blood, and I said to you, in your blood live. Meaning that in the whole ceremony of a Brit Milah, there's this verse that's mentioned about how we'll live through our blood. What blood? The blood of the Brit Milah. He says, why? Because this Brit Milah, this special covenant, is what makes Am Yisrael holy. But not just because you did it at 8 days old and nobody even asked you, but rather because you kept that Brit throughout your life. And if you desecrated at some point, you did tshuva, and then you kept it from that point on. And everybody knows, the Gemara in Masechet Yomah, page 86, says that a person that does tshuva out of fear is turning all of their sins that were purposeful into accidental sins. Meaning they're still sins, but much, much lower degree. But a person that does tshuva out of love turns all of their sins that were purposeful into mitzvot. But how could a person do tshuva out of love? By helping other people do tshuva. Helping other people do tshuva, doing kiruv, is the highest level of chesed that you do in this world, and that's the highest way to show that you love Hashem. And therefore you are literally turning all of your sins into mitzvot. Now, how do you do kiruv? Not everybody is a speaker, and not everybody is someone that can write books. Simple. Make kiruv your number one investment in your life. Make kiruv your number one investment in your life. Unfortunately, some people had the opportunity and did not do it. I heard a shocking story today from our Rosh Yeshiva, our Rosh Kollel in Eretz Yisrael, Rav Sharvit. He's an extraordinary Talmid Chacham and speaker. He's given almost 3,000 lectures in his life. And Baruch Hashem, he's our head of our Kollel. And Rav Sharvit said a real story that was actually documented. And B'ezrat Hashem, I'm trying to get the paper on it and perhaps put it on the video when we post the shiur tomorrow. But anyway, he says that there was a wealthy Jew that lived in America, and there was a rabbi that he knew. Now this rabbi made Aliyah to Eretz Yisrael, and but still stayed in touch with different people. One day, this rabbi, who was Talmid Chacham, tzaddik, good person, gets a phone call from this Jew that he knows from America. This Jew right now is, at that time, he's 90 years old, 90-something years old already. And the Jew tells him, listen, Rabbi, I don't have a wife and I don't have any kids. And what I want to do is I want to give the $50 million that I have in the bank, I want to give it to you. And you put it into Torah or all the good things that you do. You're the only person I can trust. Sounds good. $50 million. It's fantastic. You could help the world of Torah in a very big way. The rabbi knew that the Yetzer Hara is not going to let this go. $50 million going into the Torah world, it's not happening so easily. So he told the old man, he's like, I appreciate the gesture, and I'm more than happy to help you, but what's the point of doing it after you die? Why not do something now? The guy says, no, Rabbi. Only after I die. The rabbi talks to him about it for 40 minutes. Tell him, listen, you have like the best gun in the world in your hands. You have this money. You're 90-something years old. We both know you're not going to live forever. You decide that you want to do good. And you want to use this gun that you've accumulated, the best gun in the world, and use it for the best thing in the world. But you're putting something to block the gun. That's what's happening here. The guy says, I appreciate the analogy. I'm not giving any money right now. After I die, we'll go to a lawyer. I'm putting your name in the will. You're going to get the money. And after that, you're going to do it. The rabbi tries again. He's like, listen, I understand you don't want to give all the money right now. I'm not saying give all the money right now. But why don't you give something? $40 million. You have 50? Give $40 million for Torah now, while you're alive. Because you'll have merits in this world while you're alive. I mean, it's a world of difference getting the merits while you're alive versus after you're dead. After you're dead, you have no Yetzer Hara. So, in Shemayim, I say, yeah, he gave the money, but in reality, who else is he going to give it to? He doesn't have a wife, doesn't have any kids. What is he going to give it to? Idol worship. So he gave it to Torah, a big deal. But if you gave it during your life, that means you overcame a Yetzer Hara, something that you've acquired your whole life and you're giving it away for the sake of Torah. That's a big deal. So give $40 million for Torah. Keep yourself $10 million. $10 million at your age, you could literally take the money and eat every day. You still won't run out of money. Eat the money itself. Instead of steaks and everything else, you could actually eat the money. And you still won't run out of money. The guy says to the Rabbi, not even $1 am I giving while I'm alive. After 40 minutes of trying to entice this guy to do the right thing and give during his life, there's nothing for the rabbi to do. Fine, That's what his decision was. Shortly later, the guy died, and the rabbi gets a phone call from a law firm who tells him that he has to come and deal with this case. This person died. So, comes to deal with the case, and they say, okay, Rabbi, this man left $50 million for the teachings of the Bible. So we gathered all of the names of the organizations that teach the Bible, and it's for you to choose which one to give it to. The rabbi looks at the list, and he sees it's all churches, Christian idol worship churches, one after another, after another, after another. Not a single synagogue, not a single yeshiva, not a single kollel. The rabbi said, oh, hold on a second, you made a mistake here. I knew the guy. He wanted to give the $50 million for Torah. That's what he meant by Bible. They said to him, we're sorry. In this country, Bible means New Testament. Bible means Christianity. Which Christian organization do you want the $50 million to go to? And there's nothing he can do about it. Rabotai Yekarim, such a punishment is literally worse than Gehinom. Why? Because this person is not only going to get punished for whatever sins he made during his life, but now he's going to pay a heavy crime, heavy punishment that he contributed to more sins, where all of his life's work, all of the money went to go publicize idol worship. HaShem Yishmor v'yatzil. You see, Rabotai Yekarim, when a Talmid Chacham tells you something, he's not telling you something out of this is nice for you to hear. If Talmid Chacham is telling you something that has to do with Da'at Torah, a person needs to take that into account. But unfortunately, some people don't have the merit to see the truth. Don't have the merit to see the truth because they already chose not to. So the Greeks, no matter what you showed them, did not want to see the truth. They simply wanted to change the truth to whatever they felt. Whatever they felt. And Brit Milah was one of the ways that they wanted to eliminate anybody else from seeing the truth. Because this covenant that the Jewish people have with their God of cutting their flesh to show that they are different from everybody else was simply unbearable for the Greeks to see. Because that means that every action that they do has to do with their God. Every time there's a baby that comes to the world, it has to do with their God. Every time there's a marriage, it has to do with their God. It was simply unbearable for the Greeks to deal with. Now, the fourth decree, now that we're going after these three, we're going to go into the other ones. We're going to go into the other ones to show how evil these people were. Rabbi Yitzchak Ratzbi writes that the fourth decree was that, this is actually well known, and the Rambam writes this in his letters, that this was one of the decrees of the Greeks, לחקוק על קרני השברים, שאין לבעליהם חלק באלוהי ישראל, וכן על דלתות הבתים. The Greeks instituted a law, passed a law that obligated the Jewish people to engrave on the horns, on the shofarim, and on their doors that they do not have a share in the God of Israel. They no longer believe in God, in so many words. Publicly declare that they don't believe in God. Now, why did they pick the horns? Because in those days, people would use these horns as a bottle for the kids to drink their to eat their food and drink their milk. So they said the Greeks were smart people intellectually and very conniving and evil. They figured that if a baby sees a certain statement enough times, it's going to also be engraved into their heart. And this is what they wanted to, this is what they passed, that Jews publicly make a statement that they don't believe in God. The fifth decree was not being allowed to say the word God in any way, shape, or form. Not HaShem, not the Shem Havaya, nothing. Not allowed to say God's name anywhere. Why? Because the Greeks knew that so long as a Jew says the name of Hashem, this is going to remind him of where he came from, remind him of Judgment Day, remind him of decrees, reminding of mitzvot. Now, it's not just not saying the name of Hashem, but also not saying anything that refers to Hashem, such as not allowed to say the word Amen. Amen is an acronym for the word El Melech Ne'eman, the God, the King that is reliable, meaning that whatever he said, he's going to do. He said that he'll reward the righteous, he'll do that. He said he'll punish the wicked, he'll do that. That's what Rashi says is the meaning of the word Amen. Jews were forbidden from saying the word Amen. They were also forbidden from saying blessings. Saying Baruch Atah Hashem was forbidden. No more blessings. Why are you blessing God? There are many other gods. Go say thank you to them, according to the Greeks. Because they figured that even these small things that perhaps don't seem like such a big deal. Okay, so he doesn't say Amen every time he hears a blessing. So he doesn't say a blessing even. What's the big deal? Enough time passes, a person forgets that God even exists. Already we see, Rabotai, that these Greeks were very strategic with their decrees. They didn't just cancel out the entire Torah. In fact, one of the Chachamim says that the reason why there are 3 decrees, the Shabbat, the Rosh Chodesh, and the Brit Milah, that are mentioned in the Megillah, Bnei Hashmonaim, is because these 3 were the most powerfully instituted ones, enforced ones, and because Antiochus, his strategy was that he'll tell the Jewish people, don't keep these 3, but we know you have 613, so you'll still have 610. I'm not trying to cancel out your religion. I'm just telling you 3. What? I'm being very diplomatic here with you guys. I'm very open, very liberal with you. I'm not saying to cancel out your entire Torah. We want you to stay Jewish. We'll even put you in the government. We'll put you into office. We'll give you good jobs. We'll do a lot of things. Just show us that you really want to be part of us by canceling these 3, and you continue keeping your other 610. That's in essence was the evil strategy of the Greek Empire and its leader Antiochus. Now, the person that would say Amen to a blessing, or would say a blessing itself, was at life risk. If a Greek heard somebody is making a blessing, or anybody would say this guy makes blessings, they didn't need any further evidence. They'd simply just kill those people. And in essence, scare enough people by showing them, oh, we heard this guy makes blessings. Somebody told us, one of the people that already is a mityaven, one of the people that already adapted and elected to go with the Greeks by choice, he told us this guy makes blessings. This guy says, Baruch Hashem. That's why we killed him. So the rest of you learn not to do it. And people would see this and get scared to death. The Maharitz brings this in the in his Sefer, and also it's in Etz Chaim. In Etz Chaim, in Daf Ayin Vav, in 76. This is why after the miracle of winning the war took place, the sages instituted, and of the Anshe Knesset HaGdolah, instituted the prayer of En Ke Eloenu. There's a prayer in our Sidurim, both the Sfaradim and Ashkenazim have this in their Sidurim, a section, a paragraph of prayer. There's no one like our God, there's no one like our King, and we do that. Why? Because this is in essence a way to undo the damage of not saying Amen and not saying blessings under the decrees of the Greek people. Next, we have the next evil decree. This perhaps will touch the nerve of some of you, and if it doesn't touch the nerve of some of you, you should check your spiritual pulse. Shekol betula anis'et tiba'el ligamon tchila. Every woman that's a virgin and wants to get married has to have intimate relations with one of the Greeks first in order to be permitted to get married. This was one of the decrees that was passed. The whole issue of intimacy was of highest significance in the Jewish world since the beginning, because as I said before, this is what makes us holy. The way that we are intimate with our wives is one of the ways that distinguishes us from the nations. So much so that even Bilam, the Rasha, knew that this is the way to destroy Am Yisrael, where when you destroy the holiness of intimacy of the Jewish people, you destroy the Jewish people. That's why after trying to curse us 3 times and failing, where Hashem turned the curses of Bilam into blessings, Bilam gave the idea to Balak in Parashat Balak, go send all of your girls with immodest clothes and get them to convince the Jewish people to sleep with them. If you do that, their own God will destroy them. Why? Because their God hates zima, hates immorality. And that's what happened. Balak sent all of the girls to the Jewish people camp, and unfortunately, the Jewish people fell for it. And Arav Pinkus, alav Shalom, says that this was the only time in the entire Torah where HaKadosh Baruch Hu punished Am Yisrael without warning them. Where HaKadosh Baruch Hu decided to annihilate Am Yisrael and proceeded with it. 24,000 people died in literally in moments, and it only stopped when Pinchas ben Elazar ben Aaron HaKohen killed the leaders of this whole immoral act. Publicly killed Zimri and Cosby. The Zimri was the leader of the Shimon tribe, and the Goya was a woman named Cosby, was the princess. He killed them while they were in the middle of the act, and showed everybody the bodies, made a whole big Kiddush Hashem, didn't care the fact that they were going to kill him, didn't care about popularity, didn't care about the gruesomeness of what was happening. He killed them during the act, and the Mishnah in Avot says that there were 10 miracles. 10 miracles that took place during this murder, this murder that was a mitzvah, that saved the entire people. HaKadosh Baruch Hu blessed Pinchas with a life where he's never going to die. He ended up turning into Eliyahu Navi. He also gave him his neshama back, because after he killed Zimri and Cosby, all of the soldiers of Zimri, who was the leader, ran into the tent, and from the fear, he got a heart attack and died. Hashem put his neshama back into him and then gave him extra strength to fight everybody off, and actually raised both of the bodies that were stuck to his spear in the air like a flag. Another miracle, the Mishnah in Avot says that he actually put the spear in the sexual organs while they were in the act to show that this is indeed what they were doing. Miraculously went through it. Don't even imagine what I'm trying to tell you, but that's what happened. The key here is that we see that HaKadosh Baruch Hu simply decided that this was the only cure to this cancer that was a life-ending cancer. And because of that, HaKadosh Baruch Hu at the beginning of Parashat Pinchas says to Moshe Rabbeinu, for all of those naysayers, for all of those people that think that Pinchas was a extreme fanatic, just let them know the only reason why everybody's still alive, the only reason why there's still an Am Yisrael in the world today is because of what Pinchas did, because I decided that I was going to destroy everybody, and he did an act that took my vengeance for me, and because of him, I gave Am Yisrael another chance. And Rav Pinkus, Alav Shalom, wrote in his Sefer that this was a not just a heroic act, but rather this was a act that saved Am Yisrael from a punishment that was like no other punishment in the entire Torah. Now these Reshaim, these Greeks, wanted to ruin the sanctity of Am Yisrael and make sure that every holy Jewish girl that was going to get married is going to have intimate relations with one of their filthy, disgusting, Greek, excuse of a life, garbage people. Unfortunately, Rabotai Karim, when it says Nashim da'atam kala, that the mind of a woman is easy to influence, most people, especially the naysayers, the missionaries, the so-called Messianic Jews that are really Christians in disguise, they translate this in a negative fashion, that the Judaism and the Torah looks at women in an unfavorable way. This is the furthest thing from the truth. And the reason why is exactly this story I'm about to tell you, where Nashim da'atan kala is a statement that was made in favor of the holy Jewish women. Where first and foremost, we know that women are emotional, much more than men are. But at the same token, they're also not going to abandon HaShem as easily as men do at times, because of something that somebody said. So, when the Greeks passed this decree, even though the men didn't like this decree, that their future wife is going to be used property by the time they're going to marry her, their sister is going to be used by somebody before she gets married, unfortunately, many of the men accepted it. The women did not accept it. But what can they do? Comes one of the sisters of the Chashmonaim, enters the room in a place where all of the Jewish people are standing. She was scheduled to be married, and thereby she was scheduled to go into the camp of the Greeks to go commit relations with one of the Greek animals who called himself a human being. She comes in front of all of the Jewish people, the rabbis, Talmidei Chachamim, the regular people, and this tzadikah that has never been touched by anybody takes off her clothes in front of everyone. So much so that when her brothers saw this, and everybody saw this, they wanted to kill her. What are you doing? What are you doing? And they tried to actually wanted to kill her. And then this smart girl told her brothers, oh, so I'm only allowed to do this with the Greeks then? And then her brothers and the rest of the people got the message. How did you ever become okay with the fact that your wives are going to be used by one of these filthy Greeks? How did you become okay with it? I'm not okay with it. And this created a jealousy among the Hashmonaim and thereby the rest of the people that joined them. We can't continue letting the Greeks defile our households, defile our wives, defile our daughters. We've been quiet for way too long. And this was one of the acts that a woman, a righteous woman, used her beauty in order to get Am Yisrael to wake up. And it needed to be that extreme in order to wake people up, apparently. But this, Rabotai, was one of the evil decrees of the Greeks in order to enter the household of the Jewish people, because one of the people that guided the Greeks, as I told you in last week's shiur, was a heretic named Tatni ben Pachat, Rasha Merusha, who abandoned his Jewish traditions and religion and adopted to the Greek ways and advised his Greek cronies all types of strategies to go against his brethren, telling them that as long as they give them the ability to accept the korbanot, the sacrifices, then their prayers will be accepted and the Greeks will never win. As long as they have holiness, sexual immorality is not among the Jewish people, HaShem will hear their prayers. As long as they act where they pray to HaShem, they do chesed, HaShem will hear their prayers. So he constantly gave them insights about what they needed to ruin specifically. This Tatni ben Pachat was hinted in the pasuk, Atzileni na miyad achi miyad Esav. Save me from my brother, save me from Esav, where save me from my brother, that's Tatni ben Pachat, that was my brother, but really he is more Esav than anybody else. So now in the this Tatni ben Pachat, new Torah, unfortunately, like some other heretics out there today, and used it against the Jewish people. And in the Gemara Masechet Sanhedrin, page 22b, it talks about how a woman makes a brit, makes a covenant with her first mate. The man that she's with for the first time in her life, that's who she has a covenant with. That is who she's going to think about. Even if she ends up being with somebody else, even if she ends up being with Shem and Hachem, many other people, she's always going to remember that first guy. This is a known thing, and the sages knew it. This is both a physical and a spiritual. And since Tatni ben Pachat was one of the mityavnim who knew the oral Torah, this is some of the insights that he told the Greeks in order to encourage them to implement his laws, that if you want to have all of the Jewish women have Greeks in their mind and truly adopt the Greek laws, you have to make sure that the first person the Jewish women are with is chas v'shalom with the Greeks. Let her get married to another man, let her do whatever she wants, but if the first guy is a Greek, then the Greek is going to be in her system. And this Rasha Merusha is one of the people that gave the Greeks such a filthy idea. Because if they just wanted to be with women, then why not just be with all women? Married, not married, young, old, what's the difference? They specifically wanted to be with the women that were virgin before they got married. Showing how evil really is. Now, this also shows us one of the reasons why the Torah tells us that it's forbidden to teach the goyim, the non-Jews, the intricate details of our mitzvot of the oral Torah. It's forbidden for a non-Jew to learn Gemara. It's forbidden for him, and it's forbidden for us to teach him. This is why I always tell people, if you're in a process of conversion, focus on what you need to learn for the sake of conversion. Don't try to conquer the entire world of Torah in one day. Focus on what you need to learn for the sake of conversion. Because if you're learning what you need to learn, then you know that Hashem is going to be with you. Once you start learning things that are forbidden to you, then perhaps Hashem is not going to be with you, but also the Yetzer Hara is going to be with you. And before you know it, you're going to go into the wrong place. Wrong place, wrong time, wrong understanding, and you can get into a lot of trouble. And unfortunately, this is one of the things that you see in the world today. People don't want to listen to any rabbi. They just want to do whatever they want. And before you know it, they simply decide that they're Jewish. Just because they learned Torah, they decided that they're Jewish. And this, unfortunately, is becoming more and more common. Or better yet, they decide they know more than the rabbi. Why? Because they read 2, 3, 4, 5 books, or 10 books, or 20 books. They decide they know more than the rabbis. They decide they know more than Gedolei Ador. So this type of distorted mentality is not something that appears overnight. It's something that is created over time when people don't learn what they're supposed to be learning. So the Greeks wanted to make sure that the knowledge that they had of the oral Torah is going to be used against the Jewish people. And that was one of the things that they implemented. The seventh decree is that the Greeks outlawed mikveh. Anyone that would send his wife to the mikveh would get a death penalty. As we know, a Jew is not allowed to be with his wife during our menstrual cycle. He has to wait until the bleeding stops, a minimum of 4 days, even if she bleeds for only 1 or 2. Minimum of 4 days for Sfaradim, minimum of 5 days for Ashkenazim, plus 7 days for both. Meaning, it's 11 days minimum or 12 days minimum out of the month. The Jews are not with their wives. The Jewish men are not with their Jewish wives. Sometimes it's longer if she bled for longer, or needless to say, if she just had a baby, then you're talking about a couple of months or more. But nonetheless, anytime the woman is bleeding from that part of the body, if it's coming from the uterus, she's forbidden from being with her husband. She's considered nida, which is spiritual impurity. That doesn't make her a bad person, chas v'shalom. It doesn't make her a person that's lesser in any way, shape, or form. Just that she's forbidden from being with a husband. This is actually a time for her and her husband to build their relationship without intimacy, which is very, very much a needed part of every relationship. And nonetheless, this is one of the things that creates holiness in a marriage, and also creates a constant state of attraction, a constant desire for a Jewish man to be with his Jewish wife each month, because he's never overdoing it. He's never overdoing it. Just like Shlomo HaMelech says, Dvash matzata echol dayeka penis beina v'ikiato. If you found honey, which is referring to a woman, a Jewish woman, you found honey, meaning you're getting married to her, eat only a little bit, because if you eat too much, you end up throwing up. In so many words, this is an analogy for saying, you married a kosher woman, perfect. Don't overdo it. Why? If you overdo it, then what's going to end up happening is you're not going to want her anymore. And this we see in the secular world, in a non-Jewish world, where over 80% of people that get married in Western society get divorced within 5 years. It's pretty much normal for people to get divorced at least once during their life, if not more often. It's no longer frowned upon. It's no longer taboo. In fact, if you're a celebrity and you've gotten divorced less than 2 or 3 times, you're not even an A-list actor anymore. You're not an A-list celebrity. Because to be a celebrity, you have to be already through several marriages. And you can literally have people in their 20s, in their early 30s, already through 3 or 4 marriages, and without even thinking twice about it. And unfortunately, this is a Greek mentality. This is a Greek mentality that has infiltrated the world and is still in the world today. And one of the things that keeps a Jewish marriage holy and different is the fact that you have mikveh. Mikveh is when the days are completed, like I said, either 11 or 12 days respectively, and the woman then goes to the mikveh, and the husband and wife are together that night. It's very, very important for the man to be with his wife during mikveh night. It's a very big deal. It's like a holiday. It's very important for a man to be with his wife during mikveh night. If the woman does not want to go to the mikveh, she's called a isha moredet. Rambam says a isha moredet is a woman that does not want to be intimate with a husband, and this is one of the grounds for divorce without giving her a ktubah. So it's a woman that doesn't want to be with a husband. It's a very problematic woman. Same thing with a husband. Husband doesn't want to be with his wife. It's also a grounds for divorce. Needless to say, if a woman doesn't want to go to the mikveh, which is typically what happens, if she doesn't want to be with her husband, she doesn't go to the mikveh, because then she knows that even if he doesn't care, if he's a religious Jew, if she didn't go to the mikveh, he won't touch her hand even. Needless to say, he won't be with her. So this is one of the things where is a grounds for divorce if somebody doesn't observe this mitzvah. Now, the Greeks would have none of it. Why would they have none of it? Because for them, to limit a person to only one woman, to limit a woman only to one man, was unprecedented, was unacceptable. It's too religious for them. Too religious for them because they wanted each person to be with whoever they want, whenever they want. Now, so far we see how different the life of a Jew is versus the life of a Greek. Certainly, to finish this whole list, we're going to have to do another shiur, so I'm going to give you one more decree and then we'll go over the whole thing so far. Try to wrap it all up. The next decree that the evil Greeks passed was the prohibition for a man to give his wife, write his wife a ktubah. Write himself a ktubah. A man wanted to marry a woman, he has to give a ktubah. In those days, it was customized that a man would write his own ktubah, which is a contract. Today, it's the custom is for the either the rabbi to write it or you simply to, buy it, a rabbi to buy it, and you pay for it. Or if your rabbi really likes you, he'll give it to you for free. But nonetheless, this ktubah is the contract. Is the contract that a person has when he wants to marry a woman, because that contract in essence is a purchase. The Jewish man is buying the woman, not buying her as a slave, chas v'shalom, but buying her in a sense that she belongs to him. Everything that's hers is becomes his, and he is owes her. He's obligated to her. He has to give her sustenance. He has to be intimate with her. He has to give her clothing. He owes her also. It's not just a one-way street. Now, of course, the feminists and the anti-Torah people will tell you, yeah, this is not good. This is how Judaism puts down women. They're making them purchasing them, and they're putting women down. This is as far from the truth as it gets. But this is actually one of the ways that the sages instituted to protect the women. To protect the women. How do they protect the women? While the Greeks wanted to outlaw this, and anyone that wrote a ktubah for his new wife would get their fingers cut off, the Gemara says in a couple of places, in Masechet Ktubot, page 11a, in Masechet Yevamot, page 89a, and other places as well, that the sages instituted the mitzvah of a ktubah in order to protect the women from being thrown out for no valid reason. Why? You cannot use a Jewish girl and abuse. You can't just use her, get what you want, and then just throw her out just because you want to get somebody a little younger, or you want to get somebody with a different hair color, or you want to get somebody that cooks different style food. if you're going to be allowed to be with this woman, you are obligated to her. And if you violate that obligation, you'll have to pay for it. A certain price that is already predetermined before you get married. Now what happens if the guy committed, okay, I'm going to give this woman a ketubah, he writes in the ketubah, he likes her, he wants to show her that he likes her, he writes $100,000 on that ketubah, he writes $500,000 on the ketubah, he writes whatever number. Yeah, I love you, honey, this doesn't really make a difference, whatever, $500,000 I'll give you, don't worry. And he thinks to himself, it's never really applicable. Never applicable. I'm marrying her forever, right? And Mr. Wonderful over here marries the tzadikah, and then 5-6 months later, he says, listen, honey, I don't love you anymore. What do you mean you don't love me anymore? What do you mean? What are you talking about? You don't love me anymore. No, listen, my secretary, I think she cares about me, and this and that. Okay, no problem. You give her a get, you want to leave, no problem. That's what you want to do. You want to ruin your life that way? You want a replacement with some zonah? No problem. You have to pay the ketubah. Oh yeah, that ketubah, I don't have the money. I have some real estate deals that have to go through, and this and that. Habibi, sell everything. You have to sell everything. Go borrow the money until you pay that ketubah. Not tomorrow, not in 6 months, not when your deals go through, immediately. There is no such thing as a divorce being complete without him paying the ketubah. No such thing. Yeah, but I'm going to lose money as a result. Who cares? It's your problem. Should have thought about that before you cheated on her with some secretary. So here, the sages instituted the whole issue of ketubah for the protection of Jewish women. Not to be used and abused, chas v'shalom, by filthy people that want to act like Greeks, even though they look like Jews. And the Greek people wanted the Jewish people to throw their wives out freely. Why? Because the whole Greek mentality was to promote promiscuity. Promote homosexuality, promiscuity, free bodies, free this, free that. So here you see the first 8 of 22 decrees, and it's obviously tragic. Now, let's ask ourselves the question. You see here that the Greeks tried to destroy Judaism by forbidding us from keeping Shabbat. How many Jews do you know? Forget about how many Jews are in the world. Forget about how many Jews you don't know. How many Jews do you know that call themselves Jews, that are celebrating Chanukah right now, eating sufganiyot bigger than their head, playing with the sivivon, acting proud to be a Jew, but yet do not observe Shabbat? Ask them, what makes you a Jew any more than makes you a Greek? The Greek wanted you to desecrate Shabbat. You, in the year 5782, or 2021 according to the Gregorian calendar, are desecrating Shabbat just like the Greeks wanted you to. They said that if you desecrate Shabbat, you're one of the Greeks. Are you Greek? No, come on, man, I'm not Greek. I'm a Jew just like you, even more than you. Then how come you don't keep Shabbat? Nah, it's like this, it's like that. Okay, fine. It's like this, it's like that. Fine. Second, Rosh Chodesh. Rosh Chodesh is not just a day that Am Yisrael celebrated back then as a day full of Torah, but also Rosh Chodesh is symbolic of all of our Jewish holidays. We need to know exactly when Rosh Chodesh is in order to know when Rosh Hashanah is, in order to know when Yom Kippur is. If we do not have the right calculation of when Rosh Chodesh is, we could be fasting on the wrong day and eating on the wrong day, and thereby, chas v'shalom, getting a karet sin, cutting ourselves out of the covenant of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Going to Gehinom, getting punished in this world and the next. If we don't know when Rosh Chodesh is, we could be eating chametz on Pesach and eating matzah on a regular day. If we don't know when Rosh Chodesh is, we simply do not know how to observe God's laws. Do you observe God's laws? Do you fast on Yom Kippur and not drive on Rosh Hashanah, and also observe all of the Yom Tovs, whether it's the one Yom Tov or two Yom Tovs, depending on where you live? Or are you Greek? Because the Greeks didn't want you to keep two Yom Tovs. In fact, they didn't even want you to keep one Yom Tov. So much so that they instituted a decree for you to forget about Yom Tov by forgetting about Rosh Chodesh. Why are you celebrating Chanukah and not celebrating Tisha B'Av? You eat the sufganiyot and latkes on the rabbinical holiday of Chanukah. But on Tisha B'Av, when the rabbis tell you that you're obligated to fast, you look at them like they have 5 heads. No, I got to work, Rabbi. I can't fast while I'm working. You think it's an elective fast. Is this one of those easy fasts, Rabbi? No, I only fast on Yom Kippur. I don't fast any other fasts. Okay, Habibi. What makes you Jewish? Any more than it makes you Greek. Third is the Brit Milah. Everybody says, no, I got my kids have Brit Milah. That's not really a big deal. Why? Even Muhammad and Mustafa give a Brit Milah to their kids. Sometimes Chris and Steve from the church also do a Brit Milah for their kids. It's not exactly such a big deal to do a circumcision anymore. Like I said, billions of people have circumcised male members. Question is, do you know what to do with that Brit Milah as far as what makes it a Brit Milah versus a circumcision? There's a circumcision which billions of people have in the world today. And then there's a Brit Milah which only few know how to keep it as a Brit Milah. Protecting your Brit from promiscuity, protecting your Brit from wasting seed, protecting your Brit from all of the things that are forbidden according to the Torah and the sages. That's what keeps that Brit Milah holy. When you see that there's an abundance of homosexuality in communities which include the Jewish community, and all types of people, including some rabbis, are accepting, not only tolerating it, accepting it as if this is the new reality. As if this needs to be the new reality. We need to accept them. Where there are some people that call themselves religious Orthodox homosexuals. Like, this is not a oxymoron from hell. Now, if you see that people have desecrated their Brit Milah to such an extent, and you're not concerned enough to do something about it, there's something wrong with you too. The fact that there is literally only myself in the world today, in the English-speaking world today, that regularly speaks about the issues of Brit, specifically with immorality and wasting seed, is a disaster and a half. As much as I love to get more and more mitzvot and to take all of the world's mitzvot to get people to do tshuva for this issue, the reality is we need more Yirei Shamayim Jews to teach about the issues of immorality. But you can't teach people about immorality if you yourself are immoral. And unfortunately, that's what happens sometimes. You have people that are immoral teaching about morality, and then you find out they're the worst people in the world. So the key is to understand is that each and every single person that understands the significance, the importance of the teachings of morality needs to make sure that there is as much of it as possible. As much of it as possible. There's more books, there's more lectures, there's more videos, there's simply more of it, because this is what distinguishes us from being animals. Not even from being goyim, from simply being animals. This is the difference between man and animal. If we are holy, then we are men. If we're not holy, we're simply animals. If you're not protecting your Brit, and worse yet, you're promoting immorality by the way that you act. You're promoting immorality by the way you dress. You're accepting immorality as a new standard. You're accepting immorality as even being good. Why are you celebrating Chanukah if you're more Greek than Jew? The fourth decree that told us that they wanted us to not remember HaKadosh Baruch Hu by simply engraving on the horns, engraving on the doors, that we have no share of the God of Israel. This is symbolic of how people treat their mitzvot of mezuzah and tefillin. You see a person with a $500,000 house, $1 million house, $2 million house, but the tefillin that he's wearing are from his bar mitzvah 15, 20 years ago. You tell him you should buy a normal pair of tefillin, cost you a couple of $1,000s. No, Rabbi, I have these already for 20 years, they're still good. When's the last time you got them checked? Oh, you have to get them checked, Rabbi? Why, nothing happened. They only fell a few times, what's the big deal? Person has $1 million in a house that's going to stay in this world, but tefillin from his bar mitzvah. Or better yet, he has a very expensive house and a salary that goes along with it. But if you tell him that you have to get some good mezuzot, it's going to cost you $150, $200 or more per mezuzah, he looks at you like you have 5 heads. Why so expensive, Rabbi? Oh, so the house you could spend the money on. But protection for your house and for everybody in it, you figure that you can live without. Apparently you forgot this house also owned by God. Maybe you should write on your door, you have no share of the God of Israel. Maybe you should write on your car keys, you have no share of the God of Israel. Why? Because for the things of this world, you have no problem spending money on, just like the Greeks. But the things that have to do with the next world, with eternity, is always a problem. There's always stinginess. You tell a guy, listen, you give maaser, 10% of the income that you make for the sake of Torah. Oh no, Rabbi, listen, I give money, but I give it to like my, people that are in my family. I give it to my kids. I give it to my wife. Are your kids and wife homeless? Are they poor? No, they live with me. No, they're not poor. So how do you consider what you're giving them maaser? What? What? It says help your own family first, Rabbi. Help them if they have a need, not if you're already obligated to do it. But people will use their maaser as if it's the IRS write-off sheet. Everything that they ever spend on anything, they want to pretend as if it's maaser. Tell them, why don't you take that $100,000 you make a year, write a check for $10,000, put it for some kollel, or for kiruv, or something that's going to help the world of Torah. Oh, Rabbi, can I just give a part of it now and maybe later on when I make more money? Is a person has forgotten who HaKadosh Baruch Hu is. Forgot who HaKadosh Baruch Hu is. He thinks that he's the one making the money. It's very sad, Rabotai. It's very sad, but it's true. It's very sad, but it's true. Person does not make Torah, and not only Torah, but a Torah that actually helps people. Their number one investment is a person that has to ask themselves, why are they celebrating Chanukah? Because they're doing the same thing that the Greeks did. They're investing into this world. Now, one of the ugliest things that the Greeks did, is to tell us that we can't say HaKadosh Baruch Hu's name because they wanted us not to say blessings, not to say Amen. And today, Rabotai, you have to remind people to do a blessing before they eat. Did you say Shakol? You say mezonot. Yeah, I'll do it after. Wait, so you ate already and you haven't even said thank you to Hashem? Yeah, after. Oh yeah, I forgot. Imagine if a Kadosh Baruch Hu forgot to give you food for a day. Imagine he forgot. And you just simply didn't have food in the world for you. You forgot to say thank you. You ate already, you forgot to say thank you. And Chas v'shalom, you mentioned to the guy that he has to say Birkat HaMazon. Rabbi, I think this is mezonot. Do I really still need to do Birkat HaMazon? What do you mean it's mezonot? It's bread. How is it mezonot? Listen, Rabbi, I'm in a hurry. Is there a short version of Birkat HaMazon? I don't know. I think to myself all the time that it's amazing to me, more than anything else, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu doesn't give certain people poverty. It's like they know they have to say thank you, but they only want to say the short version of thank you. They'll dafka not eat bread because they don't want to thank Hashem. They'll dafka, on purpose, not eat a real meal because they don't want to thank Hashem for more than a minute. It's amazing to me that HaKadosh Baruch Hu simply doesn't just impoverish those people. How much mercy HaKadosh Baruch Hu has, much more than man, much more than I can even imagine. But in reality, there are certain people in the world that will not eat bread because they don't want to say thank you to HaKadosh Baruch Hu for more than a couple of minutes, because that's Birkat HaMazon. They don't want it. It's amazing to me that Hashem will say, you know what, you want to say thank you to me? How about this? I'm not going to give you food anymore. How about that? You're going to eat like Holocaust victims. How about that? Then you'll remember to say thank you. Of course, HaKadosh Baruch Hu doesn't think like me. Thank God he doesn't think like me. But it's amazing to me that that's the case. If a person doesn't even know that he's supposed to say thank you, he's like a pig that just eats and eats and eats whatever comes to him. Honestly, that person has more of an excuse than the person that knows he's supposed to say thank you, but he only wants to give the short thank you. Of course, the other person's also wrong for not saying thank you at all. He should say thank you for obviously for everything that he has, but this person just lives in a generation of entitled people. They think everything is supposed to be theirs. And sometimes they think that it's the rabbi's job to pacify them. Like this young man sends me a request, says to me, listen, can you, if I give you $180 to send somebody to Kever Rachel, can you have them pray for me that I'm going to be 6 feet 3 inches tall, have a great hair forever and never go bald. I'm going to live a long life. And I'm also going to have a beautiful jawline, be physically built, great health, and I'll have a wife that fits my standards physically, and also mentally and spiritually. And can you do that for me for $180? Kever Rachel? Obviously, I said no. And then he started saying, okay, can I just get this for $180? I said, no, nothing. None of the requests I can say yes to. We're not going to pray for you to be a certain physical status, or to have a wife at a certain physical status, we're not going to pray for that. We're not praying for people to be Greeks. You could be Greek by yourself. You don't need my help for that. You have not learned any of our Torah, therefore you think you can buy us with $180. We don't want that kind of money. Go to some reform guy that's going to take money and tell you whatever you want. But unfortunately, I will tell you, people are so delusional today that they don't know right or left. They don't know up and down. Needless to say, they think God owes them something, that if they give his Torah a few shekels, he's going to give them the right this, the right that, this, that, the other thing. Needless to say, when Hashem actually gives them what they want, they still forget him. As it says in Sefer Dvarim, after I give you the food to eat and satiate you, don't forget me. Why? It's within human nature to forget Hashem after we get what we want. This is even more of a reason of why we need to not forget him. If you have an opportunity to eat bread and therefore say Birkat Hamazon, or not eat bread and not say Birkat Hamazon. It behooves you to eat the bread and say Birkat Hamazon. Yes, it'll take longer, but it's worth it to eat the bread for the sake of praying to HaKadosh Baruch Hu longer and saying thank you to HaKadosh Baruch Hu even longer, because that's one thing that distinguishes you from the Greeks, that either don't pray at all or they pray so short that you're not really sure whether it's a prayer or simply they sneezed. We see, Rabotai, that when it came to saying prayers, saying Amen, all that stuff, these are all logical things. But they haven't necessarily touched the nerve with everybody yet. Until we got to the issues of where the women were obligated to go and be with the Greeks before they got married to the Jewish guy. Now this, of course, bothers everybody that hears it. If you're about to marry some tzadikah, and she says, listen, I want to marry you, but I got to go and Marcus Aurelius over there, I got to go hang out with them for a little while, and then I'll be back. I'll meet you at the chuppah. The thought of this makes your head want to explode. That she has to go with some Marcus before she gets married. Who can live with such a thing? Right? You can't live with such a thing that a woman's going to be with somebody else before she gets married. Right? So how come it's so common that the girls and the guys feel at home with testing the grounds with different people before getting married? Why does she think that it's okay to be with somebody before she gets married to him? Why does he think it's okay for him to be with somebody's before he eventually picks a wife? Why does the world look at it as it's not a big deal, rather than looking at it as it's a disgrace? You see, Rabotai, we see clearly how wrong it is for the Greeks to decree that a woman has to be with some Greek before she gets married to a Jew, because we figure it's against her will, right? And we're not really always understanding, how do you compare that's against her will, she's with a Greek when she really wants to marry a Jew? How do you compare that to some girl being promiscuous today before she gets married, or some guy being promiscuous today before he gets married? How do you compare the two? You compare the two because they're exactly the same. You see, if this girl, if she's not an outright zonah, and she's just a normal girl that simply thinks it's okay to be with some guy before she gets married, that's only because she's assuming she's going to marry this guy. It's only because she's looking for a serious relationship. No normal girl is ever going to be with the guy just because. She's assuming something will develop out of this. If she knows for sure that this guy is going to throw her out like a bag of rotten food, for sure she won't even spend a minute with him. If she's a normal girl and she knows this guy is like a Greek, that as soon as he gets his way, he's going to throw her out like garbage, she won't even look his way. So of course it's the same exact thing as the Greek decree. When you're promiscuous and you allow yourself to be with somebody, whether you're a male with a female or a woman with a male, whatever it is, and you allow yourself to be with somebody before marriage, it's exactly like the Greek decree. Why? Because since it's not going to lead to marriage, and you're assuming that it can, had you known that it won't for sure, had you known that they're going to throw you out like garbage, you wouldn't do it. And therefore, after the fact, it's always against your will. It's always against your will, especially since it becomes addictive, both physically and mentally. And you end up wasting a lot of your time with people that simply take advantage of you, both physically and mentally. But it's your fault. You put the evil Greek decree on yourself. You view the Greek decree as repulsive and disgusting. And you didn't see that you're putting that evil decree of disgusting nature on yourself when you are with somebody before they get married. I always tell both the boys and the girls that contact me that are dating someone serious and they're about to get married, whether it's a week later, a month later, or 6 months. Not really sure why people delay things so long, but I tell them, listen, until you have a ketubah in your hand and you're married after the chuppah, you are complete strangers. You're not allowed to look at her a certain way, not allowed to touch her. You're complete strangers, regardless of what you did until this point. You're complete strangers. Don't act like you're married. Because acting like you're married to somebody before you're actually married is putting the Greek decree on yourself. And needless to say, putting that Greek decree on somebody else. And if you were with somebody and then threw her out, what makes you think that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is not going to give you the same punishment and have somebody do that to your daughter in the future? Oh, you didn't think about that, did you? Because you're only 20 and you only think things that are 20 minutes later. As you get older, you start thinking about things that are a little longer than 20 minutes later, maybe 20 years later. But a smart person will start thinking about the future today. Whatever you bring to this world, the Kadosh Baruch Hu is going to bring you right back. Even the Goyim know that this exists and they call it karma. The Torah calls it measure for measure. If you're a promiscuous man, you can be certain that unless you do very, very serious tshuva, and even then, it's very likely that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is going to do the same thing to you. Make you feel that same pain that that girl or those parents or both felt when you threw somebody out after using their body to your likings. Same thing with women and same thing with young and old. When people are promiscuous, they're bringing evil to the world, needless to say, to their life. And the Greeks knew exactly what they were doing when they instituted this. Because since they heard different aspects of the oral Torah from Jews that went against the Torah, they also heard about what it says in Tikkunei HaZohar, Tikkun number 70. It says that there are certain neshamot that come from the Sitra Achra and thereby have certain inclinations that are the opposite of what is normal. He feels like a she. She feels like a he. They feels like they want they. Instead of just a person, they want people or animals or all types of strange desires. The Zohar says these people came from a intimate act that was between a man and a nida. She was his wife, but she didn't go to the mikveh, she didn't keep talat mishpacha. Or she was a goya, a Jew and a non-Jew. Or she was a shifcha, she was a maidservant, she was an underling, she was a secretary, she was somebody that was under his control. Or she was a zonah. She was a promiscuous woman, whether prostitute or simply a woman that was not married to him. She's considered a zonah. A woman that has intimacy without being married is considered, according to the Torah, a zonah. And the neshama that will come out of that woman will certainly be one of those that is likely to be a problematic neshama that could have strange inclinations, strange desires, difficulty when it comes to Torah.
and a hurdle to overcome in order to do tshuva. But nonetheless, each neshama that comes to the world with those strange inclinations or with difficulties and so on is also given the strength to overcome them. And I've seen with my own eyes of how people that were born with certain strange inclinations overcame those inclinations, overcame their distaste for holiness, and become holy people. Not once, not twice, not 5 times or 10 times. I've seen it many times with people that have done serious tshuva, and Baruch Hashem, some of them, many to our shiurim, after serious dedication, they completely became holy people. That at times I would ask them for blessings. But nonetheless, those people had to overcome a very, very difficult hurdle because their parents wanted to act like horses. The Greeks wanted everybody to be like the children of horses. Let the Greeks do what they want to do. Why are you helping them by being promiscuous? Why are you helping them by promoting promiscuity and having it on your screen, showing your children all types of promiscuous movies, showing your children all types of promiscuous shows, showing your children and your wife and your husband and everybody in your household all types of things that promote promiscuity? Why are you promoting Greek methodology and yet expecting your family to remain preserved? It's important for us to know that we're bringing these Greek decrees on ourselves. When it comes to the mikveh, Am Yisrael that remained strong was willing to get the death penalty and still send their wives to the mikveh, because they knew that there was no other way for them to be together. There was no other way for them to reproduce. There was no other way for them to live together without the wife being pure. Unfortunately today, according to a study that was done in 2017, according to the Gregorian calendar, about the modern Orthodox community, only 50% of women in the modern Orthodox community go to the mikveh, which means that nearly half of the children that are coming out of the modern Orthodox community, half of them are coming from a nida. Half of them are coming from a zona. Half of them are coming from a forbidden relationship. Half of them. Is anybody surprised of why there are so many heretics in the world? And so many atheists? And so many people that are promoting all types of agendas that are against human nature? If you want good to be in the world, you have to start by producing it. You have to produce good. HaKadosh Baruch Hu did not have any investments in pools when he made the laws of Tarat Mishpacha and obligation to go to the mikveh. He's not an investor in mikveh companies. He did it because he knew that's the way to produce purity in the world. When a person does not view mikveh as an important time in the family's life each month, not just the husband's, not just the wife's, but the family's life, the family's future, they need to, at the very least, invest some time to learn more about this mitzvah and realize what they're missing out on. We have a video on our channel about the both scientific findings about the issues of mikveh that was made years ago by Rabbi Yuval Ovadia, and also there is a book that our own Rabbanit Shulamit Kachlon wrote about the issues of Tarat Mishpacha. She's been a Baalanit for almost 40 years. All types of stories that we got from different students she has, students of our own, different people wrote how many miracles they had as a result of keeping Taharat Mishpacha, going to the mikveh. A person that does not observe this mitzvah of Taharat Mishpacha, which is only for married people, a person that does not observe this mitzvah is simply living a Greek life. Why are you celebrating Hanukkah if you're acting like a Greek? And this is not to encourage Greek lives and discourage celebrating Hanukkah. It's a rebuke that's coming from pain to see that a lot of people are doing things to themselves and not realizing that they're doing it. The whole issue of Ketubah, Rabotai Yekarim, is the last thing that we talked about tonight, and the last thing we'll finish off with today. Ketubah is supposed to be a agreement that you make in order to remind yourself of your obligation. But today it's turned into a big business. People are so enamored with materialism that before they even get married, they have to make all these arrangements. You're going to pay this, you're going to pay that. If you don't pay this, we're not getting married. If you're not going to pay that, we're not getting married. You have to buy this, she has to buy that. Pretty much both sides of the family are barely closing the month, but they both expect the other side to be a millionaire in order to pay for all these different things. On top of that, people that do have a few dollars, they want to make sure they're protected from everything. Listen, if you didn't come into this relationship with anything, you're going to leave with nothing too if you leave. Already they're thinking about getting out of the relationship before they even started. Now, of course, again, a person needs to be smart and not expose themselves to risk. Be smart about certain things. But if you don't trust this person you're about to marry, why are you marrying them? If you're already married, why do you have two different accounts? Separate accounts are for separate people. If you're a family, there's a single account. If you're a family, there's no secrets. If you're a family, you make decisions as a family. But unfortunately today, money has become such a big thing that the Ketubah is the beginning of many, many agreements that will follow. 90% of fights in families are about money. Why don't you fight with him about him learning more Torah? Why don't you fight with her about being more modest? Why don't you fight with him more about him dedicating more Torah to Shiur Torah? Spend some time learning, spend some time connecting with the rabbi, spend some time learning Musar. Why don't you fight about that? Why don't you fight with her about learning more Musar, more Torah? Why is all the fights about money? Don't you think that if you fought about things that are more meaningful, perhaps the things that are less meaningful will be worked out by HaShem? Or you think it's a fantasy? Well, the Mishnah in Avot says, it's our critical foundation of our oral Torah, in the name of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. Anyone who takes on himself the burden of Torah, Kadosh Baruch Hu takes away from them the burden of the government. Meaning, you learn more Torah, HaKadosh Baruch Hu will take more of the responsibilities of this world. I.e., you learn more Torah, you work on yourself more to serve Hashem better, Hashem will take away some of your money problems. If each wife would argue as much about her husband learning more Torah as she does about getting a new car or a new fridge or a new vacation, we'd have a lot more tzaddikim in the world and tzaddikot in the world. But if you view the Ketubah as a business agreement from day one, and that's how your life is operated, it's all based on business, it's all based on money. Your Shulchan Shabbat has more business talk on it than Wall Street desks. Then you're not going to have a very successful life, and needless to say, your kids are not going to be very much different than the Greeks. We have many other decrees that the Greeks put onto the Jewish people, but as you could already see, the first 8 that they passed on us that nearly destroyed the Jewish people, are still nearly destroying the Jewish people today. But not because the Greeks are putting a sword to our necks and enforcing it, rather because we are forcing it on ourselves by not learning Torah and by simply adapting to the Greek laws without ever checking what the Jewish laws are first. During this Chanukah, I highly recommend that each and every one of us spend some more time learning more Torah. Learn what makes you Jewish. Learn about what it is to be Jewish. Why is it that the Jewish people are compared to oil? Why are we compared to orange juice? Why are we compared to candy? We're compared to oil while the Torah is compared to water. Anytime you have water, the Gemara in Masechet Ta'anit, you'll see that the water travels to the lowest point. The Torah travels to the person that's most humble. Oil, on the other hand, no matter where it is and who's next to it, it'll constantly remain separate from it. It'll constantly remain separate from it. The Jewish people are supposed to be separate from the Goyim. Thereby they're supposed to be like oil. Separate from everybody else. Don't be like everybody else. Don't act like them. Don't look like them. Don't want to be them. How can I do such a thing? You use the Torah to humble yourself. And the more humble you are, the more you'll become different than the rest of the world around you. B'ezrat Hashem, we'll see each other again later this week to go over more of the decrees and perhaps learn more of what makes us Jewish, not just today, but also what will make us Jewish and our kids Jewish tomorrow. Thank you very much for learning with me. May HaKadosh Baruch Hu bless each and every single one of you to serve Hashem at the highest possible level, sanctify His name, and B'ezrat Hashem, get all of the miracles that He already wants to bring to you in your life in the merit of this Chanukah. Kol Tuv, B'chava Tzlacha.
אני מברך את הרבנים, אני מברך את הרבנים, הרב ירון ראובן, הרב אפרים כחלון, ראשי ארגון בעזרת השם, שהלכו בפי עליון, שעלו מעלה מעלה, יהיה להם ברכה והצלחה, הקדוש ברוך הוא ימלא בישונות ליבם לטובה ולברכה, שבכל מה שיפנו ישכילו ויצליחו, יזכו לעשות כאלה וכאלה, הודיעו תורה לאדירה, אמן ואמן.
בעזרת השם רשת בכל הארץ. הוא היהודי הזה, הוא היה מיליונר, סגר את כל הביזנס, אמר אני משקיע פה בעולמה של תורה. איפה הוא גר? בפלורידה. פלורידה, איפה זה פלורידה? באמריקה. באמריקה. כן, ליד. אנחנו שם עכשיו הולכים להקים קהילה ספרדית גדולה.
תעבירו מה שבירכתי אותו.
כן, קהילה ספרדית גדולה.